All right, everyone, it looks like it is 2 o'clock. I see that you guys are still logging in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you to this webinar, A Whole New World, How and Why to Focus on Online Major Gifts. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce you to introduce myself. My name is Abby Jarvis. I'm with the team over at QGive, and we are all about helping nonprofits raise more money, whether it's online or offline. And that's why we're really excited to have Adam and Carrie over here with us now. Just a couple of housekeeping items. I see a lot of you on here are QGive clients. If you have any questions about how you can apply this to your own donation forms, let me know. I'll get you in touch with the right person. And if you are not with QGive, that is fine. Everything here also applies to you too. Just a couple other things. We are recording the webinar, so don't worry. We'll send you a copy of this recording and a few other resources at the end. And I wanted you also to know that we will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions throughout, you can go ahead and drop a note to me in the chat box, and I will make sure those are asked at the end. With us today are Adam London and Carrie Rice. They are the minds behind Project Donor Love. They are passionate about fusing the concept of donor love into every facet of online fundraising, and they're going to share some fantastic insights with us about how taking that approach will affect major donors and the way they choose to support us. So I'm going to go ahead and switch things over to you, Adam and Carrie. There we go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to QGive for having us. QGive is one of the products that Project Donor Love has always felt deeply connected to, and we're honored to be presenting to people who use QGive and those who are interested in the product. But most of our presentation is product agnostic, and so we think that there's something for everybody. We encourage you to ask questions as you go. Abby knows that she can interrupt us along the way with questions, and but there's also going to be plenty of time at the end for questions. And our goal is for you to end this webinar feeling like you can take some sort of action towards successfully collecting major gifts online. I feel a little bit guilty saying this, but we are calling in from San Francisco, where it's 52 degrees and it feels kind of like winter. I think Adam would agree with me on that.
Yes, definitely.
So we guiltily ask if people could tell us where you are calling in from, if you could just put that in the questions, and either like how many feet or kilometers of snow, what is it, meters? meters of snow you have where you live, or how cold it is. And maybe Abby, you could tell us some of the answers that you're seeing, so we can get an idea, so we can feel worse about where we're calling in from.
Well, one person has got, quote, 1 million inches of snow and more on the way. But it looks like a lot of people are calling in from places in the south. I know I am in sunny Florida, where it's actually super hot. It looks like we have two extremes. We either have people who are absolutely buried, or people who have absolutely no snow. So people from all over the country, but two very, very distinct extremes.
Very interesting. Well, welcome to everybody, and we're excited to talk to you, and I'm glad we don't have to feel too guilty, because we've done this when people are in freezing cold places with frozen pipes and things like that. So, okay, so let's talk about the learning objectives for this webinar today. Adam.
Yeah, so let's get started by talking a bit about our motivation for creating this webinar and what you hope to get out of it. One thing we'd like to communicate is that the experience of major donors, in fact, of donors at all levels, attempting to make gifts online is generally poor. Again and again in our practice, we come across nonprofit websites that are overall well-designed websites, good visual design, a good navigation structure, easy to find your way around. They do a good job of communicating the impact of the organization. But then when you arrive at the donation form, it's a letdown. It is ugly, it looks dated, it doesn't fit with the rest of the site, and it just does not have the same level of care as everything else on the site. Despite that fact, it doesn't have to be that way. In 2019, the technology has caught up to the needs of major gift fundraising. It is now possible to create donation experiences online for major givers that are comparable with what your donors are used to experiencing from e-commerce sites. And by making the giving experience compelling, you can not only solicit major gifts online, but potentially raise gift amounts.
Okay, so we're going to do a poll here. Abby, I'm going to let you take the reins. We'd like to get an idea of who's in the room, as they say. So if you can click one of these, if we guessed right, which, I mean, really was a guess of who'd be in the room, or if your title is not reflected here, then in the questions box, just type in what your title is, and we'll give that just a moment. And
well, it looks like everyone is, well, I won't say that. Most everyone is in development. We do have a couple major gift officers in here, which is really exciting. We've got a couple, we've got a program director, but it looks like the vast majority here are the development director. You do have, yeah, it looks like most of you are at least in directors' roles. 43% are development director, but I'm really fascinated by two things. 3% here are major gift officers, and 11% are board members, which is really exciting to me.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Interesting. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that with us. So one of our goals as part of this presentation is to customize it to you, the people who we now know are actually here in the room. So if you feel like we bring up something that is not possible to do at your organization based on the size or that type of thing, like please feel free to bring those things up, and we're happy to try to address those things. So no matter what your title was above, you are a unicorn. I don't know how many of you follow Vule. He has I guess it's nonprofit AF now, but it used to be nonprofit with balls. And he has a book that just came out at the end of last year called Unicorns Unite. And he says that all of us are unicorns because we chose this work and stick around because we believe that if we want to make the world better, we can't wait around for fate or other people to take care of things. So whoever you are, even though we're talking about donor love, we're also talking about unicorn love. This isn't just about improving the donor experience, it's also about making life easier for you, the development professional, and of course your organizations.
So let's start getting into some of the details. Why are we talking about online donation forms, and why are we pairing that with major gifts? Firstly, nonprofit donation forms overall have surprisingly low conversion rates at all giving levels. So if you're not familiar with the term, a conversion occurs when somebody goes to your donation form, fills out all the required fields, and submits it successfully. So if somebody goes to the form and submits it, that's a conversion. If they go to the form and don't submit it, then that's not a conversion. According to the M&R Benchmarks 2018 report, the overall conversion rate for nonprofit forms industry-wide is 17%. In other words, if somebody goes to the form, about 17% of the time they're going to submit it. Now, there's many reasons why somebody might not convert on the form, but we think that that is a very low number and can be improved on.
Yes, especially because it's not like they're going to stumble upon your donation page. They technically are probably people who came to your organization's website and came to your donation page intending to make a donation, and then they don't. So that's 83% of the time. And that's disappointing. And that's part of why this should be improved at every giving level. But particularly today, we're going to be focusing on having at least one major gift page on its own that is completely separate from the regular donation page that you have on your website.
So speaking of major donors, one thing to keep in mind as a piece of background here is that major donors are already on your website, even if they're not making gifts online. They're coming to your website to learn about events, to read your annual report, to read your blog, to learn about the impact of your organization. So your website is already an important part of your relationship with many of your major donors. And we think there are ways that you can extend that relationship to include encouraging major donors to make gifts online.
Yeah, we have a saying which is donor love at first sight, and we sometimes spell it S-I-G-H-T and sometimes we spell it S-I-T-E. But the idea that someone who is perhaps even a new donor who wants to we want to make this experience as easy and compelling as possible for them. So for example, I had a friend whose mother passed away, and she requested that people make a contribution to a specific organization in memory of her mother. So of course that's what I wanted to do. Well, the website didn't work. So I called the organization and they told me to mail in a check, and I was like, okay, and I took down the information and where to send the check and so forth, and of course I forgot about it. So the next time I saw a similar organization that had a similar concept to it, I made a donation there because it was easy to do it that way. Although I admit it wasn't an actual major gift, let's be honest. I kind of feel like if you've been to QGIve webinars before, you probably know what donor love is, but I'm curious when you thought about the fact that this was related to donor love and that our organization, our company was called Project Donor Love, what does Project Donor Love mean to you? So if you can share some thoughts that you have about that in the questions box, Abby will give us some examples of what you think of when you think of hashtag donor love. Like, where did it come from? What does it mean? How do you think of it? What attracts you to it?
Well, this one, Peter commented that he says that it's a feeling of importance and belonging. Aaron chimed in and said it's about investing time and appreciation in your donors to keep them engaged. Showing people just generally your appreciation for their involvement and inspiring them to feel more connected. One person said stewardship, which I thought was really interesting because it really implies that it's an ongoing, like, two-way relationship. The one that got me, because Nancy knows my heart apparently, is that donor love isn't just financial support, but it's also talking about an organization to get others involved. So not just being a donor, but being an advocate also, which I think is beautiful. So you guys have a really good grasp on this concept, which makes me really, really happy.
Yes.
Yeah, people probably don't often think of websites or donation forms as part of what's included in the definition of donor love. So part of what we're hoping to change your mind about in this webinar is that your website is part of how you express donor love. So you already have a pretty good sense of what donor love is based on those answers, but let's talk about this a bit. We wanted to take a minute to talk about donor love because we think that it is a mindset or approach to donor stewardship that underlines truly effective fundraising at all gift levels, in fact. In case you haven't heard of it, it's a Twitter hashtag that's used to talk about various aspects of donor stewardship. We've looked for something that looks like an official definition of donor love, but have never been able to find one. So this is our work towards constructing a definition. To our minds, donor love is fundamentally an application of empathy. When you are trying to practice donor love, that means you are using your imagination to place yourself in the position of your donor and to try to understand what's their experience of interacting with your organization, of making a gift or participating in a program, volunteering, whatever it is, if we expand it to be a bit more broadly, since a donor might also be someone who participates in other things. As such, we think a good way to come at understanding donor love is to start with the donor and what effect we're trying to have on the donor. We think that donor love means that donors feel that they are understood by your organization, that you understand what motivates them and what motivates them to give to you, what that gift means to them. It means that donors feel that the gifts that they make to your organization are appreciated, that you are thanking them well and quickly and frequently for the gifts that they make you. It means that donors feel the impact of their gifts, that your organization effectively communicates the impact of the work that you do so that the donors can connect the money that they are giving to you with a difference that they are making. And this leads on to the fourth point, which is donor love is not a concept constricted to your organization. By giving to your organization, if the donor understands the impacts, then by giving their gift, they feel that they are having an impact on the world around them, which is a rare and valuable thing in what often seems like a chaotic and disordered world. Perhaps this is all a way of saying that donor love means making donors feel like they matter.
And that can be a change from traditional fundraising, which, at least in our opinion, does not have that same message of great impact beyond those that they serve directly. So what are we here to talk about today? So we're going to start with sort of a general concept of creating a major gift form, which is a different donation form on your website that's specifically for major gift fundraising. And then we're going to talk about some best practices that apply to a major gift form, but also truly apply to all of your forms. And this is like a little checkup, let's call it, where we can go through it and you can think about this in terms of what you're already doing for just gifts of all sizes, but also specifically if you're going to set up a secondary form or a tertiary form that is just for major gifts, that these are things you're checking in on. So that's recurring gifts, making that easy and possible, having ask ladders set up, making transaction fees available and easy for people to pay, and making sure that you have a mobile responsive website. So depending on what level you are, when we asked previously in the conversation, if you're a development staff person or something like that, it's not that you can necessarily go and just magically change the website, or maybe you can, but probably you have to go convince somebody. So one of the things you can do is take this presentation to them. So hi bosses, if people came to see this presentation, this is going to convince you about why you should have a major gift form. And if you do have some control over what's going on your website, what's going on in your donation form, then maybe this is the impetus for you to try some of the ideas that we bring up in this podcast at your organization, and see how things work out. Try and give it a period of time, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out.
So let's get the ball rolling by talking about major gift forms. Now, when we talk about soliciting major gifts online, this often causes a bit of nervousness. One piece of background to keep in mind here is that nonprofits are already receiving major gifts online, often without even trying. So Steve McLaughlin, the VP of Data at Blackboard, had an article in 2017 where he analyzed the Blackboard data set of all the nonprofits using the platform, various Blackboard products. He found that it was common for nonprofits to receive $1,000 to $5,000 gifts online, at least every now and then, which is well within the major gift cutoff for a lot of organizations. Another interesting statistic to keep in mind here is from the 2018 Donor Experience Study by Community Brands. They did some surveys and found that the people most comfortable with giving large amounts online were, firstly, younger people, millennials, and secondly, those with household incomes over 200,000. The latter group, at least, is certainly the sort of group you'd be targeting for major gifts.
We would imagine.
So, what are we talking about with major gift forms? What we don't suggest you do is go and add a $5,000 option to your main donation form. Having that next to, a $10, $20, $50 options and things like that, that would be intimidating to people who are intending to make, a $100 or $200 donation. Instead, a major gift form is a separate donation form that has suggested gift amounts that are targeted specifically at major donors. A major gift form is also one that is not part of your regular navigation. There's no links to it on the site. Somebody has to just know what the URL is to see it. So how do people find the major gift form? Well, you bring your major donors to the form. And there are different ways you could do that. It could be done through targeted emails at major gift donors. It could be done through direct email, through direct mail targeted at major donors. Or it could be done in the context of major donor targeted events.
Yes, and I think everybody has been at an ask meeting on behalf of their organization where the end of the conversation goes, hey, would you like to submit a pledge or do you have a check? How about being able to pull out a tablet, make sure that you have a cell phone plan here and don't count on Wi-Fi so that make sure the cafe that you're at works. But being able to pull out a tablet and being able to actually enter their gift amount and be able to say, like, I have people who are all about the frequent flyer miles and being like, we can do this right now. We can take care of this right now. You can make a one-time gift. You can make a recurring gift right now in person. And you have the ability to just try that out and see if that's something, there are people who you trust amongst your major donors that you could say, I want to talk to you about, a new concept that we're trying out, which is this form, and how do you feel about it? So that's like a realistic thing for a lot of organizations to do. So what can you do? Normalize online major giving. Yeah, so we talked about some different ways that you can include a major gift URL as a hyperlink in an email that's targeted or in a direct mail that goes out that, instead of just going to your donate page, it's, the name of your organization.org/donate. Gold star or whatever, and that takes them to a different page. So they're not seeing the page that says $15 and $25 and $50. They're seeing whatever your organization considers to be major donations, and that's going to depend so much on your organization itself. And it's important for people to understand what online giving and what making these major gifts, recurring gifts online does for you is really important. And for them to feel moved to make a gift, there was a thing that was going on a while ago that it still happens from time to time called rage donating, where people suddenly feel really strongly about something and they make gifts all of a sudden that, and they overwhelm the website. And, when you think about in 2019, how many people are going to pull out their phone to quickly make a gift to your organization because they're pissed off about something, versus taking out a checkbook, letterhead, envelopes, a return sticker, a stamp, whereas making a donation is as easy as making a pledge, or sometimes even as easy as buying a pair of jeans online. And I think it's interesting to try out this thing about taking tablets on asks with you. So setting up this hidden page, and trying it out at asks with people, like I said, that you feel safe and comfortable with. You know, do a little pilot here, let's call it, of just saying to someone, you know, how do you feel about being able to make a donation instantly with me? You know, does it feel weird? Does it feel awkward? Are you excited because you know that, you know, you're going to have enough frequent flyer miles to go to Barbados by next month? So giving it an actual try.
So this is an example of a segment of what could be a major gift donation form. This sample's actually built with QGive in case it looks familiar to some of you. Mm-hmm. What we'd like to talk about here is the fact that the suggested donation amounts kind of create their own context. Now, imagine if we had these $2,000, $1,000 amounts on your main major gift form with $50, $100, $200 options. If, you know, your median type of donor is arriving at that form to make a $200 or $100 gift, those $1,000, $2,000 amounts might seem intimidating. They'd wonder about whether their $200 is enough to actually matter. Conversely, if you were driving the major givers to your main donation form that was asking for 50, 100, 200, then they might question, well, do you really need 2,000 if you're asking for 200? So the donation suggestions create their own context.
Yeah, and I think just looking at the numbers that you see here and just thinking to yourself, like, of the donors that you have, major donors that you have, or people that you're currently working with, doesn't it seem reasonable that there are some who would look at something like this and would not be scared of numbers like this? Like, this is, you know, like the equivalent of going to Amazon and buying a television for $995. Like, you know, this is something that for some people is a realistic thing, and using, you know, you have to know who the right people are to use this with. You know, this isn't to be used for everybody, but it's a great way to move people. For example, using this example that goes down to $750, people who typically give you $500, you know, moving them into this category in your segmentation, where they have to type in 500 as the amount instead of just bumping up to the next level, which in this particular scenario is $750. So we're talking about real amounts of money here. You know, even as one-time gifts for some of you, $75 or $50 is a lot of money, and for some of you as monthly gifts, recurring gifts, these are a lot of money. So this is a great opportunity for some questions. So is everybody kind of following what we're saying? Does it make sense? Is there anything that we've left out at this point that doesn't make sense about sort of the central idea about having there be a different place for potential or existing major donors to go, where they're going to go to a different place, an equal place? It's not radically different than where they would go normally. It's just something where visually they're going to have a user experience of being bumped up in terms of the amount, just as you would in real life bump up those amounts and things like that. And I think maybe later in the presentation we talk a little bit more about segmenting. Yes, that you know, that you can do this for people who have given you $1,000 to $25 to $24.99. You can do it for a separate group, which is people who've given you $2,500 to $49.99, and try to bump them up to whatever the next level is that you're expecting. And then if they want to give you that lower amount, they have to enter it. So Abby, do we have any questions?
We have a lot of questions. One that I think is most interesting, it looks like Michelle just wants a little bit of clarity. So you guys are saying that you wouldn't want to link to your donation form that's set up for major donors, right? It wouldn't be the primary donate button, but she did ask how you would feel about including maybe a link that says, will you make a major gift or something like that? Is that something that you would do, try to segment or let your donors self-segment by offering 2 different donation forms?
Absolutely. I think if someone self-selects into a group that's major gifts, then it should go to whatever they consider to be major gifts for their organization, whatever their default setting is of major gifts. I think that in terms of people who have not made that choice, then what do you suggest?
Well, the big challenge with having donors self-suggest is just phrasing it in a way that doesn't sound tacky. Of, asking, rich people on this side, poor people on this side.
Yeah, or
like
big. We were doing a program recently that was like, big something, and I was like, what are we going to call the other form? Little? Like, it can be insulting to people. So no, it's a hidden form that has a name that could be major donors. It could be, if you're really talking a lot about recurring gifts, which we're going to get into, then it's the sustenance of your organization over a sustained period of time. So having people know that providing $1,000 a month is not only 20% more than giving you $10,000, but it's also you being able to hire someone part-time for $2,000 a month.
So yeah, maybe one more question.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so one lady, Chandra, asked an interesting question. She is kind of taking this concept and applying it to events. So she asked what you would do if you were at an event where there's a mix of donors, so some who have a greater capacity than the others. How do you handle a situation where you have a mixed donor base at one event?
I would say that you would have probably created a special form just for that event.
Yes.
That's based on the ticket prices and based on the mix of people that you have, that, hopefully you have I don't know, Adam always knows the technical terms for things. I don't know the things hopefully you have the flexibility in your content management
system, to have multiple forms.
To have multiple forms, so you can have a special form. But yeah, I think that that's definitely a quandary if you're doing it at an event that has a mix of people, because we don't want to encourage segregation. So I think probably trying to find something in the middle.
Yes, unless your major donors on site, then of course you could show them the major gift form instead of the regular one.
Yeah, and then they could still put in something lower. Yeah.
And I would also suggest, just because I actually was at an event a few weeks ago, the event that I attended had volunteer staff on hand to take donations, and they would just process them right there. So that way a volunteer could identify what the donor wanted to give and then process it correctly. So it kind of kept the awkwardness out of the situation. They didn't have to ask, well, are you a major donor? Or are you a different donor? They could just kind of do it on their own, process it right there. The donor got a personal, authentic thank you, and the volunteer was able to segment. The donors didn't have to. So I don't know if that is always the case, if you can just have volunteers floating around an event taking donations, but it's certainly an option that I've seen work well.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right, recurring gifts, one of my favorite topics.
Yes, we think that you should encourage recurring gifts on all of your donation forms, in fact, for major donors and otherwise. Now, people are often a bit hesitant at the idea of encouraging recurring gifts. Asking for recurring gifts sounds like you're asking for a greater commitment from the donor than a one-off gift. We'd argue, though, that this can actually be beneficial to the donor. Keep in mind that most people in the United States, at least, are organizing their budget on a monthly basis.
And that includes wealthy people. Like, part of how they stay wealthy is that they have monthly budgets. So it is something that donors understand,
right,
at every level.
Salary is something they're getting monthly. Rent or mortgage payments are monthly. Car loans, student loans, their gym membership, Netflix. All of these sorts of things tend to be monthly expenses. So fitting a gift into a monthly budget fits the donor's mental model better than saying I'm going to make a big gift at the end of the year and now I have to prorate that over the 11 previous months and so forth. Recurring gifts are also, of course, better for your organization because that helps you get to a more consistent revenue. If you're able to up the percentage of your donors that are making monthly recurring gifts, then you are, getting some insurance against peaks and valleys of cash flow. We also encourage recurring gifts because of some interesting statistics out there about recurring gifts and people making recurring gifts. There are a bunch of studies comparing gift amounts of someone making a one-time gift at the end of the year versus recurring givers. And what you'll see across the board are that the recurring givers are giving on average 2 to 2.5 times as much as the one-off givers. Another very interesting fact is that recurring givers tend to have higher retention rates. In fact, in the fundraising effectiveness study in 2016, they found a 46% year-over-year retention rate for one-off donors and a 90% retention rate for recurring donors. So what can you do about recurring gifts? One thing that is important when we're talking about recurring gifts is that obviously the suggested donation amount for a recurring gift should be different than the suggested donation amount for a one-off gift, particularly when we're talking about major givers. So if this is something possible on your donation form, the ideal here would be to have it dynamically shift so that if somebody clicks monthly as their desired type of gift, that will change the numbers. If they click, what single time gift, that will change the numbers again.
We don't see that very often, though.
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing is to be able to communicate how important these recurring gifts, these major recurring gifts specifically, are for your annual budget. So being able to actually commit, I had a former client who recently was able to add a part-time position because she was able to count on a couple of donors who committed to monthly gifts, and it was enough to cover an actual part-time program officers, which completely upped the game of the organization, just by setting up recurring gifts, just by knowing that that money was coming in from month to month, and being able to add to that. Also, incentivizing recurring gifts for any level or specifically for major donors, whatever it is that you do to reward your major donors or your capital campaign donors or your annual fund givers or your major donors. You can have an entire category that's just recurring donors, people who are identified by you based on not only the amount of their generous gift, but by the fact that they're sustaining your organization by giving at that level. And then making sure that when you do other fundraising throughout the year, that you make sure that your message on their specific communications is segmented so that you're sending a spring appeal and saying, we know you already make monthly gifts, but this is something above and beyond that we're asking of you. And that's a way of showing familiarity, genuine familiarity with who your donors are.
Third topic we'd like to talk about today is having sensible suggested gift amounts. Now, I've mentioned suggested gifts a few times so far. One of the things we're talking about here is, so we're talking about major gift specific donation forms. Segmentation is the key when it comes to effective online major gift fundraising. Keep in mind that a major gift form is something that is hidden from the main navigation of the site. You have to drive traffic to this form. As such, you don't necessarily even need to have a single major gift form. It's quite possible for you to have multiple ones so that you can create more carefully targeted major gift donation forms. So if you can, for example, segment your major donors based on historical gift amounts of 2 to 5,000 and 5 to 10,000, or maybe a few other categories just as examples. You could have separate major gift forms for each segment based on gift amount. Or you could also have certain major gift forms tied to particular campaigns or events. So the more you can segment and break down the donors to get at just what you think is the right ask amount for each group of donors, the better. The ideal here would be personalization, where you could have different ask amounts for each individual person that you're showing this donation form to. Realistically, that's going to probably require some custom programming, so that could be an expensive option, but that's going to get you the best results if possible. So a word on how many suggestions to have and what those suggestions should be. There's a great deal of detail and many articles out there you can read about this. A rule of thumb we like to use is, when in doubt, 4 options is a number that's going to avoid overwhelming the donor with options, but still provide them with enough options to be meaningful. One trick there is, if you show people a list of 4, the largest number of people are going to choose the second option. So however you order your options, make whatever the second option is be approximately what you're targeting for an average gift amount on this form.
Or even your stretch gift.
Indeed.
If that's appropriate.
So what can you do about gift amounts? Firstly, as we were saying, segment your major donors as much as possible. If possible, also figure out if you can personalize your donation forms so that you can have individually personalized ask amount based on previous giving or capacity or any other information you have about your major donors.
You can personalize your ask amounts based on previous giving and capacity. So again, a lot of it depends on the size of your organization and how much material you have access to, and then the sophistication of the program you're using. But the closer you can get to personalization, the better. You need to be available, figure out if you're going to try this at events. What are the organization's capabilities at events? Like, I don't know about you, but as a previous ED, I didn't have anybody available to be necessarily taking gifts. Literally passing the envelopes was the best we could do. And that wasn't that long ago. So, what's realistic to try? And is there a way to incentivize people at events to give this a try? To make a tchotchke, a gift available to people who make recurring gifts at major gift sizes at events. So here's a poll. So we just want to get an idea in terms of what your organization already has in place, whoever's on the line at this point, which is, on your current page, can donors opt to pay the transaction fee on your just normal donation page? So you can click yes, no, not sure, and then you can put something in the question box if you have more to say about that. So we'll give you a moment to do that.
It looks like things are pretty evenly split right now. 44% can take or let their donors offset the transaction fee. 40% can't, and there are 14% who just aren't sure. So it looks like it's edging out a little bit towards yes, but there's still about 40% of people who can't and 15 to 16% of people who don't know if they can.
So, but if they can't, then they can't be using QGIve, right? Because if they're using QGIve, then they can.
That is an option on QGIve, yes, yeah.
I'm just saying. Okay, so yeah, so that makes sense to us that there's a lot of people who don't have this opportunity, but just being aware of it, and if you are changing products or thinking about changing products, thinking about how much your organization is actually putting out on transaction fees. So how much is your organization putting out on transaction fees? Well, if you're part of the 40% that can't collect them, it's about 3% of a donation, which when you're at a major gift level, which I don't know the size of the organizations who are on today, but for example, a $1,000 gift, a 3% ask of just checking a box that says, I would like to pay the transaction fee of 3%, takes it to 1030. Some people might argue that 1030 is nickel and diming, but really think about how all those $30 add up for your organization. Donors want to know that their entire gift is going directly to your organization. And this isn't about the Dan Pallotta theory of overhead. This is about that they want their entire gift to go to the organization, even if it's for overhead. And when they're asked, 50 to 60% of people who make online donations, if they have the opportunity, will make donation costs, will cover the donation costs. We had a recent client who found that when they added a transaction fee box with the upgrade that they did with us, at all gift levels, that almost everybody, it was like over 90% of people who were making gifts were clicking that button. So it was just a no-brainer, and people were not taking it as nickel and diming.
So what can you do about transaction fees? First and foremost, see if the platform you're using for your donation forms allows you to pass those on to your donors. A great many do, but it's often a checkbox somewhere in the form settings. The main trick is that they sometimes have counterintuitive names, so you might have to hunt for it a bit. If in doubt, talk to the tech support for your donation form platform.
And if you make this option available to donors of any size, you must communicate it everywhere. So, if you have a major donor newsletter or a major donor communication that goes out, making sure that you mention how important this is, and maybe even at one point including in the comment like, thanks for the $1,000 and going above and beyond to cover the transaction fee. People will internalize this and maybe even tell their friends that the transaction fees make a huge difference to the organization, but not so much to them, and it'll be contagious.
Final topic we wanted to talk about today is mobile responsiveness. By mobile responsive, we mean websites that look good and perform well on mobile devices. In 2019, your website, including all of your donation forms, absolutely should be mobile responsive. There's a lot of reasons for this. Since 2016, the majority of all web page visits worldwide have been done on mobile devices rather than desktop devices. Also, for I think about 10 years now, I think it's more like 4 years, Google has been penalizing the page ranks of sites that do not perform well on mobile. Now, despite all this, mobile donation page performance is still quite poor. We'd mentioned previously that the industry average is a 17% conversion rate on donation forms. That's for all devices. If you split that out by desktop versus mobile devices, what we see is that the desktop conversion rate is 20%, The mobile conversion rate is 8%. So there's still plenty of room for improvement when it comes to mobile donation forms.
Yeah, I think about the time that I had a friend who was also a potential major donor. She knew I was coming to ask her for probably $10,000 or so, but she didn't expect that I was going to be able to say, like, we can set up $1,000 per month right now. You can get your frequent flyer miles like immediately. And she loved it. And it doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. It's not something that I use for everyone or that I recommend for using with everyone. But for people who like something that's digital, who like something, who are used to shopping on e-commerce sites and things like that, this will feel very normal to them, especially at an in-person ask.
Well, what can you do about mobile responsiveness? First thing to do would be to test your site on your own mobile device. What we're talking about here is a basic sort of smoke test. Open up a phone or tablet, see if you can go to the site. Can you read the pages? Can you use the navigation to move around? Can you go to the donation form? And when you're there, can you fill it out and submit it? Test that not just on your own device, but others you can easily get a hold of, your spouse, co-workers, friends, etc. Try to get some kind of sampling of some Android and iOS devices.
Random people walking down the street.
If you want to, sure.
That would probably scare them.
A second step you could go to is to use Google's mobile friendly test. The URL's there. As we've mentioned, you can download these slides later, so you don't need to write that down. This test, by the way, is the same test that Google uses when it's evaluating whether sites are mobile friendly for PageRank purposes. It's going to give you a report. It will either say, yes, your site is mobile friendly, or it will say, no, it isn't. And if the answer is no, it will tell you what things it would like you to change. Now, if this sort of testing reveals problems, you're going to need to optimize your website for mobile devices. Now, if you're using some content management systems and you're using an off-the-shelf template, it's possible that changing the template would fix that. More realistically, this is probably something that you're going to want to talk to a web developer about.
I can't go to the next slide.
One moment.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, we're having some problems here, Abby. Are you still hearing us?
I am still hearing you guys. Did you
Still
see
hearing
your PowerPoint is stuck?
Yes, my PowerPoint is stuck, actually.
Oh. Well, do you want me to ask a couple of questions?
Take over presenting for a moment, and then we'll get reset here.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, so the page I'm going to is page 22, your mileage may vary.
Okay.
So as much as we'd like to imagine that everybody is a black card owner that can, you know, spend $12,000 on their credit card instantaneously, that's not necessarily the case in this day and age with fraud and all that kind of stuff. So credit card processors might not allow a payment above a certain amount to take place instantly. So being able to just forewarn your donors that they might get pinged by their credit card company, making sure that they really did mean to, you know, set up $1,000 a month to go to your organization. They might have security settings on their cards that don't allow them to make the gifts of that size on that particular credit card, so they might need some attention to change the credit card. And some donors might even need to be walked through the process of making a credit card payment online. They want to be able to do that, but they don't conceptually understand it. And so having an intern or having an assistant available who could actually walk them through the process of setting up the credit card payments would be cool to have. So let's see here. So are we able to go to the key takeaways slide?
Yeah, can you advance to the next slide there?
Yeah. There we go, key takeaways.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, key takeaways. We've shown that you can indeed raise major gifts online, and that doing so is beneficial both to you and the organization and to your donor. But when you're thinking about major gift fundraising online, segmentation, and if you can do it, personalization, and of course the personal attention you already show your major donors are going to be key to getting the best results.
And we want to make life easier for you, especially those major gift officers out there. We hear you. You know, this is hopefully just another way that makes your job a little bit easier. So, you know, maybe this is a time saver for someone, or it really just, you know, hits the mark on how someone wants to be interacted with.
Okay, we've got a couple more slides here. Thank you very much, Abby, for clicking next for us.
Oh, this is how to contact us. Our website, again, you're going to get this presentation. Our hashtag, although I'm ashamed to say that it's not our hashtag, it's our Twitter handle.
Yes.
I always get those mixed up too. I have to admit I've not been maintaining it, and also this actually has a typo in it. It should be PROJ Donor Love, Proj Donor Love. But if you go to either of our Twitter sites or Project Donor Love, you can get in touch with us. Our email addresses are there. We would love to hear from you, and our real life cell phone numbers are there. We're in Pacific time, as I mentioned. We're in San Francisco, so please don't call at 5 o'clock in the morning. But besides that, we'd be happy to hear from you if you want to talk about how to love your donors specifically in this way, using major gift forms, or in other ways.
And next slide, please. Another offer we'd like to extend would be a free 20-minute consultation. So if you go to our website, projectdonorlove.com, and the URL will be linkable on the file you'll receive, you'll be able to, there's a form there where you can sign up for a 20-minute conversation with us about any topic you like, be it major gift fundraising or other online fundraising or nonprofit websites in general.
Cattle herding. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about for 20 minutes, but probably something related to donor love. Okay, last slide. The big one. Questions. I think we only left ourselves like 5 minutes for questions, but hopefully either things have come in through the slideshow that are obvious to you, Abby, or you have some that you'd like to share with us during our last couple minutes. But like I said, we're also happy to have you email us your questions, and we will actually email you back with our answers.
Well, Michelle, actually, before we get into any of the questions, asked just for a clarification. So Proj Donor Love, just the PROJ, is your Twitter account, and projectdonorlove.com is your actual website, right?
Yes, I know it's unfortunate, but such is life.
Those Twitter character limits, I really get you.
Exactly.
So Michelle, the website is project. So the website is projectdonorlove.com, and then if you're looking for their Twitter handle, it's Proj Donor Love.
Correct.
All right, perfect. You got it. All right, good. I got one really interesting question. I think some people are still kind of working through the process of combining the personal, like real life conversational pieces of major gift fundraising with the digital aspect of it. And we did have a question come in about the suggestion you had to segment out your major donors and then offer them a link to your hidden major gifts form. We got a question asking if major gift donors are actually turned off by an appeal online for a major gift. Is that something that is becoming more common? Is that a generational thing? What do you guys think about major gifts through email?
I don't think they notice, really. I think if they were planning on giving $250, then they're not going to notice that the hyperlink goes through to / major dot, or whatever. and they're still able to make a $250 gift. So
yeah, not all of the advice we're giving is going to work necessarily for every major donor, is one thing to keep in mind. There are certainly generational effects that your younger donors are going to be more comfortable with online, and yeah, there's stats that definitely support that. That's one of the reasons that we talk so much about events and having the form be mobile responsive, in that you can bring a tablet to an in-person ask, and then you could be the one who fills out the tablet. But the difference it makes is that you're upping the chance of getting a donation rather than a pledge at that ask. And also it shows that your organization is a 21st century organization.
That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And then just because a couple of people have asked, just to clarify, the email that you would send out is not the regular donation form that's on your site. It's the private form, not the public one. So there's been a little bit of confusion about that, but
so in a regular email that you're sending out, like let's say you have more than one email set up and you do have a major gift list. So the email that let's say you're doing a spring campaign. So you're segmenting your regular donors where the messaging is one way, and then you're segmenting your major donors a different way, and then the form you're sending them to is specific to major donors. So it's going to say spring campaign, but then it's going to mention amounts that are much higher than would show up on the form that others would go to. But they don't have to see it that way. I mean, it'll show up in the URL, but you can come up with a clever name, like just putting the number 1 next to it instead of calling it major or anything like that someone would find offensive. But you can just make it a segmented hyperlink that goes to, you said you're not supposed to say make a donation here and make here the hyperlink. So yeah, make a gift, and then, or save a life, or whatever your call to action is.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Brett Wadford asked if you two are aware of a nonprofit online that's doing this well. So he can look for an example of a nonprofit that is kind of facilitating major gifts online, whether it's making an ask or actually having a separate donation form.
That is a fabulous question, and we are just finishing up one that we're very pleased with, but it's not up yet. So it's going to be up before NTC. We're presenting several times at the Nonprofit Technology Conference. Come see us, come say hi, we'll give you a prize. So we don't have something up right now that would be a great example, but we will. And so if you go to our mailing list, we promise we won't spam you or anything. We will only, if you go to our homepage, then we will only send you things like, hey, see you at NTC, or here's a discount on something. We're not,
this is a new world of.
This is not like weekly emails or anything like that. Yeah, it's only like special announcements. So we'd be able to tell you that then.
So Brett, if you're looking for examples, you can hop over to projectdonorlove.com, and when that site is up, they will send you a little email about it.
Yes.
We had a couple really great questions that you guys answered during the previous little question break, which love always put that up. But I actually had a question. So earlier in the session, you mentioned the phenomenon of rage donating, which is hilarious to me because I have actually done that and never called it that. So I know one thing that a lot of people are having conversations around is how you can capitalize on emotions that your donors are feeling, which is certainly something that everyone does. I mean, it's an emotional game getting people to donate. But how can you take advantage of that tendency to rage donate or to get really passionate about something and donate without crossing the line into feeling opportunistic or predatory?
Empathize. Like, imagine yourself as that person who In the case of one environmental organization that I worked with on a national level, was doing wonderful things with rage donations in terms of long-term focus for their organization, and I was very pleased with what they were doing. But they were aware of those rage donations, and they just thought to themselves, like, do those people want us to encourage rage donations? Do they want us to encourage them to become a kinder, gentler donor? Do we want them to try to convert them completely? Do we want it to be a multi-step process? And that was something that they really needed to address for themselves. And it wasn't an easy answer for them to figure out, but it is something that you need to figure out for your organization.
Absolutely, that's a good way to put it. The donation that I made, and what prompted the thing, I'm particularly interested in environmental issues, and there was a situation where there had been a number of beehives that had been destroyed and all of the bees were dead, and it was a Save the Bees organization, and I got kind of a rage-inducing email, but the way they approached it was, like you said, it was very empathetic and focused more on the potential positive outcomes than the negative outcomes. So while it was a rage donation, it was still made from a place of positivity, which I think is really important.
Great point. Thank you.
That looks like it is all of the questions that we've got. We have had a number of people ask for information about your site. So everyone, I will make sure I include a link to Project Owner Love's website and their Twitter account. I will also send you the slides and any resources they mentioned, and I'll send you a couple other things that you can use to learn more about major gifts, more about online fundraising, and more about whatever you are really looking for. You guys have stuck with us through a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. We had a blast with you. Adam and Carrie, you two are delightful, and I'm so thankful that we finally got to work together. Everyone keep an eye out on your inboxes for a follow-up email from me, and until next time, I will talk to you all later.